Welcome to Award-Winning Photography Explained. This is a channel where we invite a photographer and talk to them about an image that got them an award. We take a deep dive into understanding how it was created, what inspired them, and what obstacles they had to overcome. Violet Aubertin is an amazing photographer from Sault Ste. Marie. She retired from healthcare, but she went on to become a mentor, a writer, and a photographer. And she's a founder of a number of groups, including Salt Photography Club. She's formed Stitches to help quilters of Sault Ste. Marie, and she's formed a number of Facebook groups. So, welcome, Violet.
Thank you, Manpreet, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, before we get into the amazing image that you have created, the midnight snack or the late night snack, a couple of things about you. I know I've spoken a little bit about where you've come from, but tell us a little more about yourself and how you got interested in photography. And I do believe that you were separated from a sibling and reunited much later in life. Talk to us a little bit about that as well. Tell us who Violet is.
Yes, well, I was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, and I got into photography relatively young in life. I worked with my mom's point and shoot cameras and the little brownie box cameras and taking pictures of different things. I really didn't understand why I was taking them, and then I got into film photography around the age of 18. I still own that camera today. I got into digital photography early on in the game with Digital Elf, and then on to some DSLRs, and I haven't really looked back. Spent a lot of time recording documentation and artifacts, etc., for some family history. I learned at the time of my mother's death, and it was just quite by coincidence, where all of my siblings, and I am from a very large family. I have one brother and 6 sisters. I learned by coincidence at the time of my mother's passing, when we were all sitting discussing things, waiting for the doctor to arrive. Different words came out of different siblings' mouths, indicating the existence of a sibling, yet I am the second youngest of the bunch, and I had not heard those things, so that started my search for my sibling. We were reunited in 2011, and the age spread in all the siblings had grown then by 5 years. So we have an age spread of approximately 20 years between youngest and oldest.
Wow, that's quite the story. You can almost make a Hollywood film out of that.
Yes.
So this image of yours, late night snack, it got you a merit in PPOC Image Salon, correct?
That is correct. I did receive a merit in both Ontario Regionals in 2021 and in Nationals in 2022.
So how long have you been a member of PPOC, and why did you join this association? PPOC, by the way, is Professional Photographers of Canada, for those who don't know.
So I joined Professional Photographers of Canada in about October of 2019. My goal was to further my photography and to hopefully help others along the way. What I was finding was I had started Sioux Photography Club here in Sault Ste. Marie, and it was a very tough go. I was finding that the community, although we did have certain groups of individuals that participated in outings, etc., and I still utilize those people today, and I am still a member of an outing group. I wasn't finding resources for myself at the level that I wanted to be at. So that is one of the reasons in particular that I joined Professional Photographers of Canada.
Now, let's talk about the image. The first thing that struck me when I saw this image was the textures in the image, and almost HDR feel without going overboard with the colors. You've created a great balance of colors and tones and a sense of mystery through the lighting in the image. What inspired you to create this image?
This image was originally exposed in March of 2018, and I had been traveling about 4 hours south of here to a location in Michigan where I visit on a regular basis, Decommissioned Insane Asylum, which is the location of this image.
Wow.
What inspired me was I have a very different sense of I don't want to call it a sense of humor. It's just I have almost a dark side, and it crosses a bit with a little bit of humor. And what made me think of the title was it has to do with a childhood of being brought up by a single parent, my mother, and you would live the wrath of mom if you left the kitchen in a mess at bedtime. Like there was never supposed to be dishes left on the counter or unwashed at night. So that's just the wrath of mom. So that's where the name was dreamt of. And so in visiting this location, I it's always good to bring a prop. And in this case, it was a jar, and it was my focus to the story.
So you were planning the shot when you went to visit the location?
Yes and no. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew at the time that I found the location, because every time I visit, which was at the time about four to five times a year, I had not yet seen this particular room. You don't have enough time to be in the buildings to discover it all. And every time I go, I make a plan for myself to work on something different. And this room just happened to come across my path.
So you have a limited amount of time there when you're
Right.
visiting.
That is correct.
Okay. Now this is a jar of what?
I have no idea.
Okay, it's but it is so interesting.
I know.
So how did you actually photograph this?
Okay.
Did you have a tripod? Did you set it up? Did you use any lighting?
So there's no lighting involved other than the available room light. This particular location has, in this room, there were two windows on camera left. So one in front of that counter and one behind. So behind the camera. And the light in the whole building is amazing. And when you go in there, it's just a delight to be in there. So I shot this, so you were right in assuming that it was more of an HDR. I did bracket my shots, so at 6 seconds, 4 seconds, 2 seconds, and one. They were blended in HDR Pro, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
I didn't add anything to them from HDR Pro, they were just blended. I did everything else in Photoshop.
Hmm.
And so this was shot on a tripod. And the tripod was a Vanguard with it was from the Alta series, and a ball head with an SB100 ball head, sorry. I shot in RAW, so you
Hmm.
always want to shoot in RAW because you want to retain as much information as possible. And given the fact that there were 4 images, blended gave me 4 times more information to work with, so the file becomes very large.
Hmm.
And a cable release, of course. And I the camera that I used was a Canon T7i, so it was not of today's quality cameras, and it was by far not the best camera. I used a
Hmm.
Canon 18 to 135 lens, 3.5 to 5.6, and I shot at 18 millimeters.
Hmm.
And at f14, and the ISO was 100. The image stabilization was turned off. So, I mean, these are just my certificates. So you see the difference in the image badge that you're given when you win your award from the PPOC. There's a national one and a regional one for
Hmm.
Ontario, and the image certificate from the national. So this is the actual other side of where I shot from, and what I did when I was scouting what I was going to be shooting was I was walking around the scene just to look for the best location to shoot at. And you can see that this is not the fanciest and had a lot of distractions in it, including the light coming in the window. You can't see the one on the far right, but it is there. And for October or March, sorry, it was a very sunny day. It was a beautiful day and very warm there. So by all means, the images were not pretty. These are the 4 images that were bracketed. And then this would have been the DNG that came out of HDR Pro.
HDR Pro, is that a plugin for Lightroom?
I think so. I think it can, yes, exactly.
Okay, so you buy it separately.
I believe I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This image here was the first edition of the HDR, and it I gave it the title of Mom's Late Night Snack.
Okay.
And I really liked this image at the time. It is quite over the top in terms of HDR. But I still loved it, and actually it was exhibited in a couple of locations, and it now hangs as it is there in my breakfast nook area.
Oh, nice.
So from there, when I knew I was going to enter my first image competition, and by the way, I never did mention that the 2 image competitions, both Ontario and national, were my first 2 ever
Mm-hmm.
image competitions.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was preparing these, I did seek very minimal input into the making of these the reworking of these images, I should say. It wasn't until the very end. I tried to keep it a rather
To yourself.
yes, yeah. It's kind of a thing with the PPOC is that they work their best and they do their best to ensure that the makers of the images remain anonymous.
Uh-huh.
The judges are not allowed to know who the makers are, and if they are aware who the maker is, they are required to step aside. So I took it from there and started cleaning it up. Started darkening it down with different radial filters and gradients, linear gradients, and just to get rid of some of that brightness. And then from there I changed the crop. The idea was to keep my story in focus, and that was the jar. I wanted that jar on the thirds as close as I could get it, and in hindsight, what I really needed to do with this image was to have that jar dead center in the doorway, and I missed it by a little bit. I should have moved slightly over to the left. So from there I began doing other cleanup, like those paint chips on the counter. I realized that they could be deemed as distractions, and I didn't want to gamble on it, so I began to remove them. And as you can see, I have done more darkening, more different things to clean it up. And then I became aware of the light on this. If you can see my pointer here, can you see that pointer?
Yeah.
Okay, on this door jamb, it was pretty light. There's some areas that were pretty light that I still needed to darken down, which I did do. And I needed to also to control the light coming in from the left a little bit more from that window, because the eye is drawn to the brightest part of the image, which should be your subject. I continued on that path, and I think the last thing I did to the image was clean up the jar, because there was some real troubled highlights along this edge and in this area here. I took them out, so if you see, I took them out. And I think that's the image as it is now. That was the finished image. And when it was judged, I learned quite a bit. I was quite surprised to have received the merits. The one thing that really stood out and was brought to light with the judging was the little bit of brightness that was still left here in these cupboards, and the vertical line, the horizontal lines, sorry, that were considered a distraction.
Good. So this was your first experience with image competition, yeah?
Yes, correct.
And what was your experience going through it, and looking back, what would you have done differently?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that I would do anything differently. What is very important is you need to really pay attention to what is being said. It's being said for a reason. You have to learn to accept that critique and move forward with it. Not everybody, it's amazing what you miss. And a group of 5 will pick up, and everybody sees things differently. But they're all working towards the same goal. So it's really important that you take that information with you and move forward with it. Not take it to heart and and quit, because you have to keep moving forward.
Do you also do any work professionally, or it's for personal?
The majority of my work is personal. I
Mm-hmm.
sell some of my art. I have a couple of shows per year.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done anything over the pandemic. We're just gearing back up again this year, so I haven't made any specific decisions about whether things will change. But at this point, going forward, that's where I stand.
So a couple of shows means art shows
Yes.
where you set up a booth and you. Oh, that's interesting.
I
That's
have
interesting.
done, I have been doing some freelance news photography.
Okay.
I haven't done anything since no, I've stepped away. I've not done anything since September of last or since November of last year. So
What words of advice would you give somebody who's just starting out in photography or who's aspiring to create, images that may win awards? What would you tell them?
I would say the best thing you could do for yourself is spend your money on education.
Uh-huh.
And equipment would be very secondary. You learn to use what you have, and reach out to groups such as PPOC. They are an invaluable resource. If I could have done it earlier, I would have, but I am so glad I did.
Now, where can our viewers reach you and see more of your work, follow you? Are you on social medias? Do you have a website?
I am. My Facebook is both Violet Aubertin, Aubertin, or Violet Aubertin Photography, either one of those two. And on Instagram, I'm at Aubertin Violet. And I have a website, violetaubertinphotography.ca.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great talk, Violet. I learned so much about that image, and even the location seems so interesting. But thank you so much for your insights, your experience, and talking to us about how this image was created. I will put all the links in the show note, and I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you've asked me, and I really appreciate it.
No. Well, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you.